There are moments when a woman reveals more through a single unconscious gesture than through 100 carefully chosen words. Most men spend years looking for obvious signs. They wait for direct messages, clear confessions, dramatic moments, or undeniable proof that someone is interested in them. They believe attraction arrives loudly. They believe feelings announce themselves with certainty. But life rarely works that way. The truth is far more subtle. Human emotions often appear in places we never think to look. Not in grand declarations, not in perfect conversations, not even in the words themselves. Sometimes they appear in tiny movements that happen so naturally that the person making them does not even realize they are doing it. And that is where things become fascinating. Because there is a strange gap between what people say and what their subconscious mind reveals. A person can carefully control their words. They can choose every sentence. They can hide their intentions. They can protect themselves from rejection. But the subconscious mind has a habit of leaking information through behavior. Small behaviors, quiet behaviors, behaviors that most people completely overlook. Perhaps that is why so many men walk away from interactions confused. They replay conversations in their minds. They wonder whether she was interested or simply being polite. They analyze texts. They question every smile. They question every glance. They search for answers that seem just out of reach. Yet often the clues were there all along, not hidden, just unnoticed. Most people will never hear this. Not because it is hidden, but because they stop too soon. They focus on the loud signals and miss the quiet ones. They pay attention to the obvious and ignore the subtle. They search for certainty when human connection rarely offers certainty at all. The deeper truth is that attraction is rarely a switch that suddenly turns on. It is often a gradual emotional process. It shows itself through comfort, through attention, through nervousness, through curiosity, through tiny unconscious actions that seem meaningless until you understand what they might represent. That is why this conversation matters. Not because you are about to learn some secret formula that reveals exactly how another person feels. Human beings are far too complex for that. No gesture can guarantee attraction. No movement can read someone's mind. But certain patterns appear again and again. Patterns psychologists have studied. Patterns people notice only after they understand what they are looking at. Patterns that can completely change how you view everyday interactions. And there is one particular signal near the end of this video that surprises almost everyone. It looks like the absence of attraction when, in some situations, it can mean the exact opposite. But before I tell you that, stay with me, because what comes next will completely change how you see this. As you listen, you may begin remembering conversations from your own life, moments that once seemed ordinary, encounters that felt confusing, situations where something about the interaction felt different, but you could never explain why. Suddenly, pieces may start fitting together, not because someone handed you a magical answer, but because awareness changes everything. The interesting thing about attraction is that it often creates contradictions. A person can feel confident and nervous at the same time, interested and cautious at the same time, drawn towards someone while trying not to reveal it. The human heart is complicated. Emotions are layered, and those layers often express themselves through the body long before they become words. That is why some of the signals you are about to hear seem surprisingly small. In fact, some are so common that people dismiss them immediately. A touch, a movement, a repeated habit, a seemingly meaningless action. Yet beneath those moments can exist an entire emotional story. A story of curiosity, a story of interest, a story of connection, or sometimes a story of uncertainty. Because attraction is not always about confidence. Many people assume that someone who likes them will automatically become bold and obvious. Reality often looks very different. Genuine feelings can make people more self-conscious, more aware of themselves, more careful, more thoughtful about how they are being perceived. And that is exactly why these subtle signals matter. They remind us that human connection is rarely loud. It is often quiet. It unfolds in the spaces between words. It reveals itself in the moments most people never notice. Over the next few minutes, you will discover 8 things a woman often touches when she feels emotionally drawn toward someone. Some of these signs are surprisingly well known, others are rarely discussed, and one of them challenges almost everything people assume about attraction. As always, remember something important. The goal is not to judge. The goal is not to make assumptions. The goal is awareness, understanding, learning to observe human behavior with greater wisdom, patience, and emotional intelligence. Because the people who understand relationships best are rarely the ones searching desperately for answers. They are the ones paying attention, listening carefully, noticing what others overlook. If this kind of content speaks to you, if you enjoy exploring the deeper psychology behind human behavior, personal growth, attraction, and connection, make sure you subscribe and join our community. There is always another layer beneath the surface, and together we uncover the truths most people pass by without ever seeing. Now, with that said, the first sign is so common that most people miss it completely. There is a small gesture that happens every day around the world, yet most people never stop to ask why it appears at certain moments and not others. A woman is speaking. She seems calm. Everything appears normal. Then, almost unconsciously, her hand moves toward her hair. For many people, this means nothing. Just a habit, just a random movement. But human behavior is rarely random. The mind and body are constantly communicating with each other, often in ways we do not notice. One lesser known fact is that people naturally become more aware of their appearance when someone captures their emotional attention. This awareness often happens below the level of conscious thought. The brain begins monitoring how it is being perceived, even before a person realizes they care about the outcome of an interaction. That is why hair touching can sometimes appear during moments of attraction. It is not necessarily about trying to impress someone. Sometimes it is simply the body's way of responding to increased self-awareness. The presence of a certain person suddenly matters. Do not skip this part, because this is where most people make the biggest mistake. Many assume that every hair touch means attraction. That is not true. Some people touch their hair when they are bored, some do it when they are anxious, some do it because it is a lifelong habit. The difference is context. Pay attention to when it happens. Does it appear when she is engaged in conversation with a specific person? Does it increase when eye contact becomes stronger? Does it seem connected to moments of laughter, attention, or emotional connection? The most important signals are rarely isolated moments. They are patterns. Many men spend years searching for certainty when relationships rarely provide certainty. Yet the deeper wisdom comes from observation rather than assumption. Attraction often creates a strange combination of confidence and self-consciousness. A woman may feel comfortable with someone while simultaneously becoming more aware of herself around them. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Perhaps there was someone whose opinion mattered more than everyone else's. Someone whose presence made you straighten your posture, choose your words more carefully, or become unexpectedly aware of yourself. That experience is deeply human. Hair touching can sometimes emerge from that same emotional space. And the surprising part is that the gesture is often not about the other person at all. It is about the internal experience being created within the person making the gesture. But hair is only the beginning. Because there is another signal that feels even more mysterious, one connected to vulnerability itself. And once you understand it, many interactions begin to look completely different. Here's the truth nobody says out loud. Human beings are often most revealing when they are trying hardest not to reveal anything. The next gesture centers around one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body, the neck. There is something fascinating about neck touching because it often appears during moments of emotional intensity. Not necessarily romantic intensity, emotional intensity. When people feel nervous, excited, uncertain, or deeply engaged, they sometimes reach toward the neck without even realizing it. Psychologists often describe these actions as self-soothing behaviors. The body looks for subtle ways to regulate emotional energy. It is almost as if the nervous system is quietly trying to restore balance. This is why attraction can feel so confusing. People often assume attraction should create confidence. Yet attraction frequently creates nervousness too. Excitement and uncertainty arrive together. Interest and vulnerability appear side by side. A woman may feel drawn towards someone while simultaneously worrying about how she is being perceived. She may enjoy the conversation while also feeling emotionally exposed. The neck becomes significant because vulnerability lives there. The gesture itself can reflect heightened awareness, a sense that the interaction matters. And when something matters, emotions become stronger. Many viewers know exactly what this feels like. There are conversations that leave no emotional trace. Then there are conversations remembered years later because something about them felt different. The body notices that difference long before logic catches up. This does not mean every neck touch signals attraction. Once again, context matters. Stress, uncertainty, and countless other emotions can produce similar behaviors. But when the gesture appears alongside genuine engagement, attention, and warmth, it can become part of a larger story, a story unfolding beneath the surface. And what makes the next signal so powerful is that it often appears during moments when thoughts remain completely unspoken. The next signal happens when emotions become harder to hide. A hand moves briefly toward the lips. At first glance, it seems insignificant. Yet lip touching has fascinated behavioral researchers for years because it often appears during periods of internal processing. Someone is thinking. Someone is feeling. Someone is holding back words. Curiosity lives in these moments. There are times when attraction creates a flood of thoughts that never become sentences. Questions, possibilities, hopes, doubts. The outside remains quiet while the inside becomes incredibly active. That is why lip touching can sometimes emerge during focused attention. The person is not necessarily trying to send a signal. They may simply be deeply engaged. This is where many people miss something important. Attraction is not always about expression. Sometimes it is about attention. The person who receives the most attention often receives the strongest emotional investment. Think about the conversations that truly mattered in your own life. The moments where every word seemed important. The moments where silence carried weight. Human beings reveal more during meaningful silence than most people realize. Do not skip this part, because understanding this can completely change the way you interpret connection. A woman who is emotionally engaged may appear quieter rather than louder, more thoughtful rather than more expressive. Attraction does not always create performance. Sometimes it creates reflection, and reflection often appears in tiny gestures. But sometimes the strongest signals are not directed toward the face at all. Instead, emotional energy finds another outlet. A ring, a bracelet, a necklace, a watch. Small objects suddenly become surprisingly interesting. Many people play with accessories without conscious awareness. They twist rings, adjust bracelets, touch necklaces, move watches back and forth. These actions often function as emotional release valves. When emotional energy rises, the body looks for somewhere to place it. One fascinating fact is that repetitive hand movements can help reduce feelings of uncertainty. The brain often finds comfort in familiar motions. That is one reason these gestures frequently appear during emotionally charged interactions. A woman may not realize she is doing it. She may simply feel more alert, more engaged, more aware. The accessory becomes an outlet for that energy. What makes this powerful is not the object itself. It is the timing. Patterns matter, moments matter, context matters. When attraction enters the picture, people often become more conscious of themselves, their gestures, their appearance, their behavior. And those tiny adjustments can reveal emotional currents running beneath the conversation. The fifth signal reveals something fascinating about comfort and trust. Sometimes a woman touches her own arms, sometimes her shoulders. At first, this may seem meaningless. Yet self-touch is one of the most common ways human beings regulate emotions. Excitement creates energy. Uncertainty creates energy. Anticipation creates energy. The body seeks balance. There is something deeply human about this. Everyone understands the experience of feeling something strongly while trying to appear calm. Everyone knows what it feels like to carry emotions that are difficult to express directly. That is why self-touch can sometimes appear during moments of attraction. Not because attraction is weakness, because attraction creates vulnerability, and vulnerability requires courage. The strongest people are not those who never feel nervous. They are the ones willing to remain present despite nervousness. Confidence and uncertainty often walk together. The person who seems composed on the outside may be experiencing an entirely different emotional reality within. Now we move to a signal that almost nobody talks about. Sometimes the most revealing gesture is not directed toward the body at all. It is directed toward the environment. A coffee cup, a phone, a notebook, a pen. Objects become temporary destinations for emotional energy. A woman repeatedly touching nearby objects may be channeling nervous excitement she does not know how to express directly. The fascinating thing is that these gestures often increase when emotional anticipation increases. Something feels important. Something feels meaningful. Something feels uncertain, and the hands begin searching for activity. This does not mean attraction is guaranteed. It never does. But it can indicate emotional engagement. The interaction matters. The outcome matters. The person matters. And that awareness begins appearing in small, unconscious behaviors. Do not skip this part, because the next signal is probably the most misunderstood of all. A light touch on the arm, a brief touch on the shoulder, a casual moment of physical contact. Many people instantly assume attraction. That assumption creates confusion. The reality is more nuanced. Human touch can communicate many things: comfort, friendship, familiarity, warmth, trust. Sometimes attraction, sometimes not. The key is looking for patterns rather than isolated moments. A single gesture rarely tells a complete story, but repeated comfort around physical proximity can reveal something meaningful. The deeper question is not whether touch happened. The deeper question is how natural it felt. Human beings tend to create physical distance from people who make them uncomfortable. Comfort often reduces that distance. Yet wisdom requires patience. Respect matters. Boundaries matter. Context matters. And that is why the final signal surprises almost everyone, because it looks like the complete absence of a signal. And the final sign may be the most powerful of them all. Sometimes a woman touches nothing. No hair, no necklace, no phone, no cup, nothing. She simply listens. She becomes still, focused, present. Many people mistake this for lack of interest. Sometimes it can be the opposite. Deep attention is one of the rarest gifts human beings can offer each other. When someone is fully engaged, distractions disappear. Self-conscious habits fade. Small gestures become less frequent. Attention moves entirely toward the other person. There is profound emotional depth in genuine presence. No performance, no display, no obvious signal, just connection. The irony is that people searching desperately for clues often overlook the most important clue of all: attention. Because attraction is not always loud, sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is found in stillness, and sometimes the strongest signal is not what someone touches. It is what they choose to focus on, which leads us to the deeper truth most people never learn. And what I am about to share next, nobody talks about this, but it changes everything. As we reach the end of this journey, there is something important to remember. None of the signals we discussed tonight are magic. A woman touching her hair does not automatically mean she is attracted to someone. A hand moving toward her neck is not a secret code. A touch on the arm is not a guaranteed answer. Human beings are far too complex to be reduced to a checklist, and perhaps that is the most valuable lesson of all. Many people spend years searching for certainty in places where certainty does not exist. They look for one gesture that explains everything, one sign that removes all doubt, one moment that reveals exactly what another person feels. But relationships have never worked that way. Real connection is not built from decoding people. It is built from understanding them. There is a profound difference between those two things. When you try to decode someone, you are looking for evidence. When you try to understand someone, you are looking for truth. And truth is always deeper. Throughout this video, we explored subtle gestures, hair touches, neck touches, moments of self-awareness, small unconscious behaviors that sometimes appear when emotions become stronger. These observations can be useful. They can help you become more aware, more attentive, more emotionally intelligent, but they are not the destination. They are only signposts. The destination is connection. The destination is learning how to be fully present with another human being, because attraction alone has never been enough to build something meaningful. Many people are attracted to each other. Far fewer truly understand each other. Think about that for a moment. The strongest relationships are rarely built on excitement alone. Excitement fades, mystery changes, first impressions evolve. What remains is something much deeper: respect, trust, safety, authenticity, the feeling that you can be yourself without constantly performing, the feeling that another person genuinely sees you. And perhaps that is why so many people feel exhausted in modern relationships. They become obsessed with signs, obsessed with analyzing every message, every glance, every pause, every interaction. They spend so much energy trying to figure out what someone else is thinking that they forget to ask a much more important question. How do I feel when I am around this person? Do I feel respected? Do I feel valued? Do I feel understood? Do I feel peaceful? Because attraction may bring two people together, but character determines whether they stay together. This is where confidence becomes different from assumption. True confidence does not require certainty. True confidence is being comfortable with uncertainty. It is being willing to show up honestly without needing to control every outcome. It is understanding that not every smile means romance, not every gesture means interest, and not every meaningful connection needs a label immediately. There is wisdom in patience. There is wisdom in observation. There is wisdom in allowing people to reveal themselves naturally over time. The people who struggle most in relationships often rush toward conclusions. The people who succeed tend to move with curiosity. They observe, they listen, they pay attention, they allow reality to unfold. And reality always reveals itself eventually. Everything you just heard, you already knew. Deep inside, You just needed someone to remind you. Because at some level, every person understands this truth. The greatest connections in life are rarely complicated. They feel natural. They feel honest. They feel alive. You do not need to become an expert at reading every gesture. You do not need to memorize every psychological principle. You do not need to turn every interaction into a puzzle. Sometimes the most attractive quality a person can possess is genuine presence. The ability to listen, the ability to care, the ability to make another human being feel seen. That quality will take you further than any body language secret ever could. And maybe that is why the final lesson of this video is not really about attraction at all. It is about awareness. Awareness of others. Awareness of yourself. Awareness of the subtle emotional currents that shape human relationships every single day. Once you develop that awareness, something changes. You stop chasing signals. You start understanding people. You stop searching desperately for answers. You start building real connections. You stop living in assumptions. You start living in reality. Before you go, read this one last thing carefully. This might be the most important thing in this entire video. The strongest sign of attraction is not always a gesture. It is not always a touch. It is not always a glance. Sometimes the strongest sign is consistency. Someone choosing to be present. Someone choosing to invest time. Someone choosing to care. Someone choosing to make space for you in their life. Those things matter far more than any single signal ever will. So the next time you find yourself wondering whether someone likes you, remember everything we explored here tonight. Pay attention, observe, stay curious, but do not lose yourself searching for clues. Focus on becoming the kind of person who creates genuine connection wherever you go. Because the people who understand relationships best are not the ones constantly searching for signs. They are the ones who learn to listen, the ones who learn to notice, the ones who learn to connect with sincerity. And in the end, sometimes the strongest sign is not what someone touches. It is how they make you feel when they are near. If this message resonated with you, and if you enjoy these deeper conversations about psychology, human behavior, personal growth, and meaningful relationships, I would love for you to be part of this community. A simple like helps this message reach people who may need to hear it. And subscribing means you will not miss the next conversation we share together. Thank you for spending this time here. Take care of yourself. Stay observant, stay authentic, and never underestimate the quiet signals that life places right in front of you.